What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another video from Pink Tourmaline. And we are talking about the Love Covered Life podcast and the coverage in one of these buried episodes on the prison planet theory, right? And this whole idea of the soul trap, something that we discuss all the time on this channel, of course. But this was tucked away and I didn't see it, but somebody sent it to me. I'm going to give them a shout out in a little bit. But this is a very, very fascinating interview. And the reason why it's so fascinating is because it's covered, this concept and theory and ideas covered on a channel by somebody who kind of almost doesn't even want to acknowledge the possibility that this could be something that is our reality that we need to face head on, and doesn't really have a great explanation as to why they want to discount it so much. I'm going to give you their explanation in a second, but obviously it's not very persuasive. And so I thought that was really, really cool that it was actually discussed, but obviously it wasn't really delved into to a large extent. And I'm going to do that instead today and talk about what kind of we're seeing here, what are the takeaways, what are the questions that still exist after this interview. But it was very, very fascinating. And the other reason why this is so interesting is because this is somebody that is part of the cohort of Michael Newton, who obviously wrote what's it called? Journey of the Soul. Wait, Journey of Souls. What am I saying? Journey of Souls, excuse me. And he wrote a second book, or his team or his group or whatever wrote a second book about the lives between lives. So this is somebody that's part of his cohort. And I thought this was really, really cool that she is actually to some extent confirming accounts, because I'd never heard this before, confirming accounts of this soul trap idea. So without further ado, let's get into the mix. This is a big one. This is a very, very, very interesting one. I would love to hear you guys' feedback. So let's get into it. Now, first of all, this is the creator of the Love Covered Life podcast. I can't remember what her name is, but it'll be in some of these excerpts. Either way, so this is actually from 3 years ago. The podcast I'm about to show you is actually from 2 years ago. So this is older than the interview, but this little excerpt will give you a really good idea of what she thinks about this exploration of information that we're on, exploring this idea of the soul trap. And it's funny because she calls this simply this exploration of these ideas fundamentalist. It couldn't be further from the truth. Fundamentalist would be somebody that is sticking to one set text or one set religious dogma and clinging to it and not straying whatsoever. In fact, I think that's the farthest thing from the truth for us. We're actually trying to approach this with a scientific mind, with an open mind. And most of us didn't just arrive here. We weren't just taught this from birth. Like, it's just so crazy. We arrived here by learning and reading, and just kind of this hunger that wasn't satisfied with these other explanations until we finally got here. And obviously it's not just a logic-based thing, or it's, hey, this is satisfying. It's also corroborated by multiple sources. So we're going to get into all of that anyways, but just so you get an idea of the person who's conducting the interview, I'm going to play this little excerpt.
Opinions on things. I'm not out to get you or to prove you wrong, but what I'm seeing in my comments specifically is people being really aggressive about this. And honestly, it reminds me of fundamentalist religion and how fundamentalist religion acts, pushing a very fear-based narrative. And then I see a lot of people.
Okay, let me pause it. So she's basically drawing the similarity to fundamentalism because it's fear-based. Whatever you want to say, this is brought up multiple times. I even heard Darius in our interview say something about the people that are into this theory. They're pushing a fear-based narrative, as if we want to push a fear-based narrative. That is not the objective. And that is not, and they talk later about them being positive people. And look, I'm probably one of the most positive people you'll meet. Do you think I want to go down this road? No. But at the same time, think about this basic analogy. If you're in the middle of a war and you're in a war zone and there's bullets flying around you, do you say, well, I'm a positive person, I'm just going to imagine that there's no war going on, it's love and peace, I'm just going to walk out on my street like la-di-da, it's all good, or there's a riot going? No, you have to acknowledge the negative. You're not being a fearful person, or you're not fear-mongering by saying, hey, I should be afraid right now because there's bullets whizzing by me, or there's a riot going on outside and I should stay inside. No, you're being fear-based. That's terrible. Go outside and enjoy the day. Like, this is what we're talking about here. So it's as if we're trying to push a fear-based narrative for the sake of, and again, in the fundamentalist standpoint, you could say that you're pushing a fear-based narrative to get people to belong to a church or to an organization and to, do all these things that way. That's not what we're trying to do. This is just a free exploration of ideas. And I think we're probably trying to be the most honest about reality and what's going on, because this sucks. Like, I don't want it. If you watch my earlier videos, I did not want to acknowledge this or accept this. But then people kept directing me to more and more information. I had to go down that rabbit hole. And unfortunately, it seems like there's some legs to it. So yeah, it's just not really an honest take. Or maybe she just doesn't know enough. I don't know, but it feels a little disingenuous the way she's describing it. But I just wanted to chime in with my 2 cents on her calling us fundamentalists crazy.
Being exposed to it for the first time and becoming fearful about it and becoming concerned and having questions. And I guess, honestly, in a sense, this is a good thing, because the more and more we get the word out, the more and more we spread the message of the near-death experience, then you're going to see, opposing viewpoints coming out. And that's just the natural way that this happens. But what I would say about this in general is a good rule of thumb is look at the fruit of any movement or any teaching. And the fruit that I see in this is a whole lot of fear, a whole lot of confusion, a whole lot of people not really knowing. I mean, it's not really based on any solid evidence that I can find, and I've tried to track it back to its origins. So if somebody has any link to share that seems like convincing evidence to support this point, feel free to share it with me. But the only things I've been able to find is a few outlier near-death experience testimonies that are saying something about, I felt like the light was going to wipe my mind. And a couple of channeled sources, which I don't consider to be very reliable based on other information that they're putting out that is just really outlier information, just outside of the normal message that we get from spiritual sources like this. And I don't want to go into it any more than that, because, again, my point is not to attack anybody or to drag anybody else through the mud. I just want to say I don't agree with this. I don't see any evidence that this is the case. The vast majority of near-death experience accounts, the message is that God is love, that the universe is a safe and benevolent place, and that we are powerful, infinite, sovereign beings who have chosen this experience.
I'm not trying to, I don't want to come at her too hard either, because she's just doing her best and she's trying, and ultimately it's not a fun reality to accept. And I didn't want to acknowledge this as a possibility either. But when you say that there's just no really good evidence, I mean, she brushes it off. And again, where is she looking at her source? Where is she deriving her sources from? She's just looking at NDEs. And I understand that, because for a long time, I thought NDEs were the holy grail. I thought NDEs were everything. There's so many of them and they all say so many things, and it feels like they're all corroborating each other. So that it does feel like really strong evidence. The problem is that when you start to have to open your eyes and say, well, wait a minute, but what if there's a possibility that if the system that is producing the NDEs is all one system that has the same intent, now you have to contend with the idea that these could all be manipulated. And that's like a really hard thing to accept, especially when for so long, like I was in that same situation. I understand what it's like. For so long, you've taken these things as effectively as gospel. And if anything is fundamentalist, that perspective is fundamentalist, right? You're holding on to it and you don't want to look away or acknowledge any sort of manipulation through those channels. It's the same thing with people that channel or whatnot. You have these potential sources across the board. If you do think the system has been overtaken or there's a matrix indeed, right, then all these messages that could be coming from those realms could very well be indeed part of the system and thereby be manipulations. And that's a hard thing to acknowledge. And it's difficult because if you're looking at it through a traditional scientific lens, like you have all these accounts, as far as we know, or as far as she knows, they're all legitimate. So you have 4,000, 5,000 accounts that are pretty similar. Like that feels pretty strong. So it's tough to then say, well, wait a minute. To come to that realization that this evidence that I've been relying on for so long, these could be indeed manipulated. Now she says there's no really other good evidence except for some chat. I don't know, such a weak thing. She said, I saw some things from some random sources, and then they had other stuff on their channel that I didn't agree with, so I discounted it or something like that. I don't know what she's referring to. I mean, look, she probably hasn't done a lot of research. It's fine. I'm not going to beat up on her for that. But obviously, if you look at my channel, I've just got tons of stuff. If you want to dig through it, we have so many different folks that have written lots of books on this type of material. We have teams of remote viewers that are going out and basically confirming this. We have a lot of ancient texts actually that talk about this idea of the soul trap from the Gnostics. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and we have people that have done astral projections, like different methodologies to basically go out and try and observe and try and escape the manipulation or get around the manipulation. And again, it's a tricky thing because most of these accounts are saying one thing. So normally you'd say, well, okay, I should be able to trust these accounts, and you know what I mean? We're all good. And then now to say that all that information can be tainted because obviously the system we are contending is indeed manufactured and set up to control. Like it's a tricky thing. It's a tricky thing. So I'll give her some grace. But my point in showing you this is that ultimately I wanted you to see where she's coming from with her take and with the interview that you're about to see in a minute. And in this interview, we are going to have to confront some accounts that don't go along with this nice, beautiful idea that NDEs project that, hey, we're just here, life is a school, we're learning and blah, 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 and all this stuff. Okay. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into the mix. So this is who she's interviewing, Stephanie Kraft. Stephanie Kraft's life between lives regression work is rooted in Michael Newton's tradition, using hypnosis to guide clients beyond a past life memory into the life between lives state, where they may explore the soul's journey, guides, loved ones, life purpose, and spiritual lessons. Kraft said that she trained in the life between lives hypnotherapy with Dr. Michael Newton and the Newton Institute in 2007. And her sessions include a past life regression as part of the process. She emphasizes preparation, recommending that clients first have a successful hypnosis session so they understand the trance state and can better trust what comes through during the LBL experience. So cool, because that's part of how I got in, not totally, but that's part of how I got into all this stuff. As I read this book, I read Michael Newton's book, Journey of the Soul, and also the sequel, which is I think I can't remember the title of it, but anyways, I read 2 of his books and I was watching tons of NDEs and they got me very interested. So this is the conduit through which that I arrived here in this position now. Shout out to Paul Wallace Writer. This is the one that sent me this video. So cool. Such a great video. We talked today on the live stream, and I know I saw that I had a bunch of emails from him, but I hadn't gone through all the videos yet. Pop this one on, and absolutely good stuff in here, gold stuff in here. So without further ado, let's get into the interview. Here we go. Now, here's the very interesting part right here. Souls being forced to incarnate. She says it straight up. Is this something that we would expect to see if this is indeed, hey, like we're just voluntarily going in? And I think there is some of that, by the way. I think a lot of us do just like willingly agree to jump in and do this, albeit I think that happens via manipulation, or we're convinced to do it, or we're lied to do it, or whatever it is. But the fact that there are some of these accounts, I mean, this is very, very important, because this, even a handful of accounts, breaks down this entire idea of what it's really meant to be, because this should never happen. The amount that this happens should go to absolute 0, but it does not, according to Stephanie.
Have you ever run across somebody who feels like they were forced into it? Yes. So this is very interesting, because for many years in the beginning of doing this, I had so many souls saying that they did not want to be born and they were forced to come here, and they would cry and they would say, I don't want to come. I don't want to do it. They made me. And they were dreading this life and this world. But then it's weird, and I don't know why it changed. So after the first several years of experiencing souls like that, and honestly, a lot of those were trying to get back. When I would be doing the womb part of the session, some of them would be crying and so afraid to be born that they would be saying, I'm trying to get back. I'm trying to go back home, and they won't let me. And they're making me go through with this lifetime. And I would ask who, and I don't know who they are, but they would never really be able to explain. And I don't know why it changed, but then after many years of that, all of the souls now that and it's the same, still just a few years later, it's the same age as like, our lifetime, right, of people saying, I would ask, these questions, and I would say, how are you feeling about this life that you're about to be born into? And almost everybody now says, I'm excited. So I don't know if I changed timelines or what happened, but there have been shifts in Life Between Lives hypnotherapy sessions from 2007 until now, not just mine, but across the board that's another thing that has changed.
Dude, it's crazy. All right. So first of all, what is she's talking about? She's saying a bunch of souls, and it's weird because Melissa, the host, doesn't really dig much deeper into this. I would want to ask a million questions. I mean, people are saying no, they're refusing. I mean, but the whole idea that's being described here in Michael Newton's paradigm is you go, you agree, you talk it over, you choose your parents, you choose the things that are going to traumatize you because you want all that experience. It's a learning experience. You're meant to learn and grow throughout the entire process. And the negatives are actually ultimately positives. I mean, that's the idea, right? But then she's saying right at birth, it's not as though they're in the midst of a difficult life or something like that. It's before they're even born. They're trying to fight and get out. That's crazy. What does that tell you? What that tells me potentially is that these souls, whatever, they signed maybe on the dotted line, they agreed. That's got to be why they weren't able to get out. Like they're trying to escape. And the only thing I think anyways, free will still means something. I don't know if that's true, but assuming it is, my assumption is maybe they agreed and then they figured out in the midst of agreeing and then coming into the body that they had made a mistake, or they signed the contract under duress or whatever it may be. And they were trying to get back out, or maybe the memory wipe didn't exactly work. That's sort of normally done before they enter. I don't know what the explanation was. Something like this happened and they were trying to back out of it. I mean, that's pretty intense to be hearing, especially out of Michael Newton's cohort, which is effectively a new age community. Now, the other super weird thing is, how did it all of a sudden change? She's saying she shifted timelines. She's kind of laughing about it, like, oh, I don't know. Did I shift timelines? Did they shift timelines? Oh, well, like what? And then again, she's talking about those people are forcing her. Who are those people? She doesn't really know. I mean, these are all massive questions that maybe she doesn't know the answer, I guess, but obviously to people in our community, we say, yes, these are likely the archons, but how did that shift? Like, that's nuts that it all of a sudden shifted. And then all of her clients going forward are not having these same type of details. Is that because now maybe this information was coming back and whoever's monitoring these LBL sessions is now manipulating the LBL sessions? I'm talking about entities or archons or whatever. Could that be an explanation? I don't know, but it seems pretty darn weird that they all of a sudden were all saying that, and then they flipped on a dime. And then now every single person that she's having these sessions with is no longer saying that. Like, that seems manipulative to me. How is it, like, shifting timelines? The better explanation seems like something's being manipulated. Wild stuff. Wild stuff. And again, this probably would have been dug into way more deeply had it been a different interviewer, not this podcast. Okay, now she asked point blank, is Earth a prison planet? This, got to hear this as well.
That this idea that Earth is a prison and the guides are actually malevolent beings and they're forcing us to come back here over and over and over. Based on your experience, do you see any evidence for that? I did start to see that, and I did start to wonder about that. Not that I did start to see that concretely. Yeah. But I started to wonder about that, and I had read a lot about.
Okay, so that's the first part. And now we're going to get into, I have a second excerpt because she kind of then goes off on a tangent for a little bit. But yes, she's heard about it, saying, okay, fine, nothing concrete, whatever that means exactly, I don't know. But she had read about it. She was exploring this idea. And now we get into what she saw and her theory about what she saw.
No, it could be that the concept is that the astral plane, it's like we leave this Earth And the other side immediately after would be like the astral plane. And that's what they're saying was corrupted and would recycle us back. And there would be the controlling forces there. I almost feel like perhaps there was a cleanup of that. And that's why the sessions may have changed, because it was crossing over. It was into the astral plane where those beings were. And then that's what the sessions were like, kind of like the way Michael Newton wrote about them. And then when I started up again, people were bypassing that whole realm and going directly to probably like a higher level where there weren't the things that he would describe in the book.
And again, so she's saying there was theoretically a cleanup. Like, I hope that's wishful thinking. That's amazing. But she is confirming that the astral was effectively commandeered, which is basically the whole theory here with the soul trap, is that you go into the astral and you're part of the system and you're in this like whole trap. And that's the whole idea, is you're trying to get out of this whole grid, if you will, that catches us, that puts us back into a system, that brainwashes us, memory wipes us, and recycles us back over and over. And she's saying all of a sudden now the sessions thus since that shift or whatever in that period, then now they've all been positive. And she's sort of speculating. She's like, I think there was a cleanup. That would be amazing if that's true, that all of a sudden it got cleaned up and we're free, like everything's good. But obviously the other possibility is that perhaps these sessions are linking back, right? Maybe they were actually getting to the real information. This is what I probably think is a more plausible explanation. And the archons, the entities, the forces that be, whatever, for whatever reason, because I think the system is not perfect. It's a system run by lies and manipulation. And as I mentioned before, no matter how smart or intelligent or powerful they are, there's always cracks with lies. That's our strength, is that we're trying to find the truth, and we sit with the truth. And so the system can't be perfect. And so maybe that was a crack in the system. People were able to get through and kind of bring back some of this information about the true nature of the astral and what's been happening. And then eventually perhaps that was sealed up or that was bypassed or whatever, so people could no longer access this information. That's, at least to me, what seems like a more plausible explanation here. I don't know the answer. I don't think she knows the answer, because again, she's speculating as well. But either way, how crazy is it that yes, she actually was seeing the same thing in sessions up to a point. So you can believe whatever you want in terms of why it stopped, but it's just really wild, regardless, that somebody out of Michael Newton's camp is basically affirming this theory. Okay, moving on, talking again about the cleanup, just a little joke, cleanup on aisle 9. But yeah, so she talks more about this potential cleanup that she theorizes happened, I guess, just because these accounts started to shift randomly.
I feel like perhaps there has been a cleanup of some of that, and that we are going directly to a higher realm beyond the astral plane in our sessions. And I think that's actually the answer to the question that you had asked before, and this one, that why did that change? And I think I can only assume that that's the shift that happened. Maybe our consciousness became aware of that prison type of situation or that trap, and that we broke through. Because if we are humans, but we're having a spiritual experience on the other side simultaneously, and maybe our soul said, no more of this, and maybe we took care of it in some way, because I really have experienced the change in my sessions. They're not like the books anymore.
See, that makes less sense. Like, what would that she's saying, okay, before we were getting caught in this lower astral plane where it has been commandeered by these negative entities, but that actually makes less sense, because when you're getting the negative accounts, you would think if the consciousness is being projected into that realm and extracting memories from there, if they're in charge of that realm, they would likely not send the negative stuff back and not relay those negative messages to basically make us wise to what's really going on. There you would probably get something other than that. And what instead makes more sense is we are somehow accessing the truth, and then eventually that was like covered up and commandeered, and they said, no, okay, wait, now we're gonna feed. So maybe they are accessing, I don't know, I wouldn't say another plane. It's not like they're bypassing the negative stuff. Maybe they're now like intercepting and hijacking that feed. That's what would make more sense to me, that all of a sudden now they just flipped on a dime. I don't know. That's what I think. I'm also speculating, so who knows? But that seems more logical to me than what she's positing. Okay, now we get into a question of what's our purpose. I think this is a fascinating question just in general when people do try and discuss this from the life as a school, or we're trying to have experiences or things like that from that vantage point. So I just want to share her answer when she is asked, hey, what do you think is our purpose in all of these incarnations?
It's confusing to me because aren't we perfect? Aren't we loving and more knowing as souls? And so then why do we come here? I still think that we come here for the experience. And I always ask, this question. So, for example, on the other side, we're in total love, bliss. We don't have a physical body. We don't even have an emotional body, because the emotional body of the human comes with the human form. And so we don't have those extremes of emotions. And so we want to, every time I ask that, the answer is that it's fun. And so I think it's a challenge. I think maybe it gets boring. I don't know if it could possibly get boring on the other side, but it's the contrast. And so I even had a client that it was hilarious. He and his soul group thought that every single thing that happened on earth was hilarious. And even murder, trauma, the most horrific things from their perspective in the soul state, they thought it was all hilarious. And so, not everybody's ready to hear that here, but and it was funny. We were both laughing a lot because of how funny they were perceiving things as souls. So I had another client. This was a fascinating story. She and her husband, they had been married for, I think, 25 or 30 years and this was all in the plan that he would then have an affair and their marriage would end. And the souls explained that they had made this agreement in order because they thought it would be fun. They thought that her being so devastated would be fun, and him being so regretful and alone after that, because it wouldn't work out with the affair, and then she would leave him and then he would be alone. He thought it would be fun to be devastated and alone for the rest of his life. And then she actually had another love come into her life that was planned, and she would find love and happiness and he would know about it. And they thought that this whole dynamic would be fun.
No. So we've heard this before. There's another NDE that I covered on my channel that talks about this similar idea, but not her herself laughing per se, but her being in front of a council during an NDE and them she'd been in an accident. They were imagining all the different ramifications of the accident, shrapnel in her brain, and how she'd have to live her life with a disability going forward. And it'd be so funny. And they were all on the ground laughing and thinking it was hilarious. I remember the first time I watched that video, I said, okay, I guess I could see how this theoretically makes sense, because the soul's coming out of this whole experience perfectly intact and perfectly fine. It's more like just a simulation, like playing a video game where your character goes in and incurs some harm, but it's not real. Like, you're still totally fine. So I was like, okay, I can kind of see that. But obviously the difference is it's not a video game where you're just sort of going in and having an avatar that doesn't have any feelings or emotions. Like, the difference here is we're coming in and we're suffering intense agony and anguish, and it's not fun to go through this type of thing. So then when I looked at it the second time, I thought, okay, you could say that they're just laughing because of these reasons, but what made more sense is the entities are laughing because they're laughing about how much loosh is going to be generated from these negative actions or from these pain points or different things like that. That's why it's potentially so funny to them. Now, this is a little different because she's claiming that her client himself or the souls themselves are finding this funny. I don't know what to make of that. Maybe they're convinced it's hilarious by the entities that are up there, like, oh, this is all great. Like, you're laughing along with a group of friends that think something's funny. And like, you don't really think it's funny, but you just find yourself laughing anyways. It's, what's it called? Mirror neurons taking over. I don't know what to make of it. But anyways, I guess it seems perverse, but just want to point this out. The second time I've heard this, I don't really know what to make of it. It doesn't really make sense to me. But yeah, going back to her idea of what's the purpose, ultimately, I guess she's saying experience and to have fun, to change it up. But yeah, I'm not really, it feels more like that's positioned or pitched to us. And they're trying to tell us that it's going to be a great, interesting, fun ride, when really the goal is, no, we want to get you to sign on the dotted line, to go through as much pain and anguish so that you're just a louche factory for the whole system. That seems to make more sense. And then how do you contrast it with this? Because then she goes back to this idea of ultimately it's all about love. But I thought you just said it was about, I'm not trying to, like, Stephanie's trying to make sense of this. I respect Stephanie because she's being open and honest about it. She's even saying at the beginning, hey, like, yeah, they're saying, she's talking about the school idea, the knowledge, the information. She's like, but aren't we supposed to be all knowing? Like, she's questioning it. But I do notice it doesn't exactly mesh with what she's about to say right here in terms of that idea of it being experience or being about fun.
Do you think there's a sense in which it's still important that we're loving and compassionate through all of this, that we're trying to bring out that nature in us? Or is it just for the experience and that's it?
It's all about love. Just like the vast majority of the NDEs who come back, it's the same in Life Between Lives hypnotherapy. The theme is always, always, always to love. So that's the number one. We are meant to love. We are meant to forgive all. We're meant to love everyone, be loving. That is the number one purpose and theme of life as a human.
Yeah. So I don't know. She's saying it's all about love, but then you're entering into these situations where you know you're going to get divorced and you're going to live your life all being unhappy, or you have to go. They're saying that these other things are hilarious, like these horrible atrocities. But then ultimately, does that really make sense? It doesn't really make sense. Now, on a broader note, it actually could be that the non-hijacked version of this existence could be all about love. Like, there could be, obviously there's probably truth within that statement, but it just doesn't mesh with the way I think that things are happening right now on this planet, the way that we're, in her own words, forced into this existence to some extent against our, not, I shouldn't say against our will, because maybe we signed off on it somewhere, but like forced in at some point, and then have to go through all these different atrocities and negative events and whatnot. But I do think there's something on a higher level that is all about love, and that is about connection. It is about our connection to each other. It has just been, I think, hijacked in this realm. Wait, is this the same clip here? Because I have the same title here. Hold on, let me see.
I know there's a lot of people freaked out because I hear from them on my channel quite frequently.
Oh yeah, we're going back into the soul trap idea. So this is, in this clip, she's going back and saying, hey, what are you going to tell people to ease that, put them at ease in terms of this idea of the soul trap? And this is her answer. I'm going to comment it on. I'm going to let you hear it first, but we'll go through the answer and then I'll give you my retort
about this whole prison planet thing. For those people, is there any way we could set their mind at ease? When it's their time to pass on, is there a way that they can tell if they're dealing with a truly loving entity that's there to help them, or somebody who might have ulterior motives?
That's a great question. And based on all of the NDEs and LBL hypnotherapy sessions I've witnessed, I never think personally that there's anything to worry about when we cross over. To me, it always seems loving and benign and absolute bliss and oneness and pure joy and love. So I would really hope that anybody who has those kinds of fears just drop it, because.
So again, she's saying we should drop it, and her reason or explanation is from the accounts from the LBL sessions, which haven't all been loving. She just mentioned actually earlier that's can't be true, because she mentioned these people being forced into the bodies and wanting to escape regardless. So that right there is out the door. But if she's saying all these are loving encounters and the NDEs and the entities are all great, that again, if they would study a little bit more about what we're trying to get to, is that These are manipulations. These are intentional love bombings. There's manifestations of religious figures, of loved ones that have been deceased for a long time. And Jason Georgiani says most people, when they're deceased, they usually reincarnate within like 6 months to 3 years, whatever the time frame is. From there's another book, I think it was Children. I can't remember which book Jason Georgiani cited, but either way, you have these entities that manifest, family members that have been deceased for likely, can't say 100%, but likely way too long for them to be still in the astral. They're probably already reincarnated. So these are false projections. That's the theory. And yes, you're feeling these amazing emotions. And in fact, a lot of these same love bombings are experienced with ETs, by the way. If you listen to some of the accounts and some of the testimonies from Stephen Greer's library, they'll say that they feel similar things. Very, very interesting, the overlaps there. But either way, so you can say, yes, they've all had beautiful experiences, but that doesn't necessarily negate this idea that it's still these entities can be trustworthy. Again, the feeling of love, the feeling of oneness could be some sort of a projection and manipulation that we have to be mindful of. So just to clarify that.
As the fear is what they're going to attract, or be in confusion. And I would try to work on getting really right with it here and now, and really adhere to the truth of the multiverse and the all that is, which is love. And so I'm a perpetual.
Let me pause it here, and she's going to go into how she's a perpetual positive person, which is cool. But let me just pause it right there. There is something to that. So almost like what she's saying is get right within here. It sounds like the idea of recapitulation that Howdy McCoskey champions in terms of dealing with all your trauma while you're here, all your fear points, things like that. So you're clear about your mind and your soul and your spirit is clear when you go into the astral. I think there is something to that. Okay. Absolutely. And again, it's not about being fearful. The point of this, okay, the point of learning this information, the point of me trying to research it like crazy and disseminate to you guys is not to make everybody afraid. That's not the point. Yes, it's a little bit scary when you encounter it, but the point is to learn and to understand it. So then you can know what to do. So you're not just roaming out there ready to just be attacked and or manipulated and have no idea what's going on. So eventually, with enough knowledge, if we can figure this stuff out, we can go through confident. We won't be afraid. That's the point. It's just like martial arts. The idea is, oh, fights are scary. So if you're training people how to fight, you're just fear mongering. Would anybody say that? No, that's not the point. The point is, yeah, fights are scary. We're not promoting fights. It's not like, oh, we'll just ignore fights. They'll never happen. Just walk down the street. You'll be totally fine, right? La-di-da, just give everybody love. Like, that's not how it works. There are people trying to be out there, hurt you, rob you, whatever. You want to learn how to defend yourself. And the idea is then in the midst, God forbid, if you have to go into a combat situation, right? I've been training martial arts for about 7 years, Muay Thai. If you go into that situation, the idea is then you can remain calm in the midst of the chaos. You know what to do. You have a plan. You know how to defend yourself. It's muscle memory. I mean, this is the idea. So it's just it gets parroted over and over, this idea that as if we're trying to scare people, and she described the movement as like a fundamentalist movement. No, there's not. We're not trying to get people to sign up to a church or do something crazy like that. We're just trying to learn and understand so we can be prepared. That's it.
Really hopeful and positive person. So it's really hard for me to latch on to anything fearful. So even though I had heard about it, read about it, and even pondered it so much, it's like trying to grasp like water or sand. I can't hold on to fearful concepts like that. So once I went through that phase of like, oh, wait a minute, maybe it really is like that, it didn't stick for me. So I hope that other people can kind of move through that phase too of like, well, maybe that's a possibility, but ultimately, why don't we just go ahead and believe all the NDEs, right? Because nobody's coming back and saying that. They're all talking about the love and the bliss. Same for LBL hypnotherapy. So in my opinion, we always go into bliss and love and oneness and joy. And I've never heard otherwise. Okay, there are people who have had hellish NDEs. I've never looked into those personally, so I can't speak about that. But that's never been the case with the Life Between Lives hypnotherapy session. There has been a little bit of darkness actually that I have come across in one. I only can remember one client who, or two, there might have actually been two in all 15 years of doing.
Okay, so again, look, I know I'm kind of laughing, and I like Stephanie. I really do. I really do think she's trying her best. But first of all, she talks about that. She's like the hellish NDEs, but I haven't really looked into that, so I can't speak about that. What? Like, let's talk about the hellish NDEs. And then she did just say, hey, we've had a couple of negative ones. It's worthwhile exploring, and I get it. If you look at it from a strict number standpoint, the amount of positive NDEs vastly outweighs the negative ones, but you're not looking at it through the right lens. It's not a straight numerical thing. It's kind of just like if you're trying to understand what's going on in the world today, you would say, well, look, I've looked at, let's rewind the clock. Let's go back into like the 80s or the 90s, time of my childhood. You say, well, look at all the news sources that I see. Everything is saying the same thing, right? It's saying that the world is running just as it's presented on TV. And there's one source that's saying, no, there's something shady going on, and there's a conspiracy here and this and that. But it's only one source, but all these other sources are saying the same thing, and it's all good and la-di-da, and the life is running just as it perfectly as it should be. You would say that's the same idea. Hey, the majority of the information coming through is projecting this narrative. Let's go with that. But that does not acknowledge the fact that information, right, which I think so many of us are now waking up to today, that information is coming through conduits and it's highly manicured and manipulated, right? It's manufacturing the consent. If you have not seen that documentary by Noam Chomsky, watch it. That's how the dissemination of information is controlled through news organizations, which I think so many people are wise to nowadays. And this is a case of that. That's a perfect analogy, because the NDEs are effectively the news broadcast system of the archonic system, I think, is what makes sense. And that's why the majority of them are projecting these positive messages. So you can't look, I don't think it makes sense to look at it strictly through the numbers. You need to acknowledge the fact that, yeah, the preponderance of the evidence goes to the idea that these are positive, but only because, or that there's like a positive afterlife or whatever solely. I still think there is, but it's right commandeered in the astral. But that's only because it's manipulated, it's manicured to present this so that we kind of stay entrapped in the cycle. So anyways, whew. Now, last little, I think this is the last one. Last little section. And let me see. Yeah, this is the last slide. In this one, she is saying to just let go of fear. Coming back to this idea of fear mongering, let go of fear, just let it go. Let's hear what she has to say.
Really, I would hope that people would somehow just learn to let go of fear and worry, because if you tell yourself, I am part of God and I'm going home to be one with God and the light, then you can purposefully do that. We are sovereign. We have the ability to command with our will and align with our soul, and say, when I cross over, I am going into the light, the ultimate oneness, all that is light, the benevolence, the goodness, the light, and the love of God, or the all that is, whatever you want to call it. So I think I would say just command that you're doing.
There's something to that. Ending on a positive note, there's something to that. Really, there is. Because I don't disagree. I think that we do need to let go of our fear. We do need to recognize our sovereignty. And we do need to say that ultimately we have dominion over ourselves, and where we choose to go is where we will go. And I think that's great. But just because we acknowledge the reality of the situation does not mean we have to be fearful. In fact, just like all these examples I've given you in martial arts, just like public speaking, okay, it's the same thing. Just because you acknowledge fear does not mean you have to always be afraid of public speaking. You can cultivate a strength for it and say, yes, this is a common fear. This is totally normal that I'm afraid. And there are reasons why I should be afraid. People can ridicule me. I can say something wrong, and and feel bad about myself. I could maybe say something controversial and I could lose friends. Like, there are real reasons to be afraid. But the idea is you don't just put your head in the sand and say, oh, no, the fear is not real. I'm just going to la-di-da, say whatever I want and be a terrible public speaker and just not worry about it. No, you say like, well, these fears are legitimate, but I'm going to take these fears. I'm going to move forward in spite of the fears, and I'm going to cultivate strength. And I think that's what this movement is about. So that's what I have to say to people that will come down and just criticize what we're doing and what we're trying to learn. We're just trying to learn and understand. They'll criticize it and say we're fear mongering. No, it's just facing objective reality, just like all the corruption and the terrible stuff that's happening on this planet. We just don't turn away and say, no, we're going to be positive people and say it's not real. Now, obviously there's certain things that you maybe are not going to want to focus 110% on if there's nothing you feel you can do. You know, you have to choose where to put your energy. That I understand. But to say that what we're looking at right here is just here for the sake of fear mongering and that's our only intent, it's just not the case. And on top of that, this is something where we can affect change. And that's why I'm making this content. That's why I'm making these videos. And that's why I think it's so important to dig deeper and learn, even though it may not be the most pleasant thing to acknowledge. That's all I got for you guys in this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, please. And I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.